Hi everybody, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I know I am, or I guess it's a night. But today we're going to be talking about Burial Rites by Hannah Kent, so let's get started. First of all, I just want to take a second to properly appreciate how beautiful this cover is. Easily one of the prettiest ones on my shelf. Little Brown really doesn't disappoint in that department, hardly ever. I mean, the dust jacket is this really high quality canvas paper, it's textured, and then the lettering is debossed, which I love that script so much. And to further add to the ambiance of this old book, we have deckled edges. I mean, I know you can't see that, but that's the sound of my nail running along it. I am such a sucker for deckled edges. I love how it feels on my fingers when I'm reading, and especially when this is supposed to, like, this is a historical fiction novel. It really adds the ambiance. I felt like I was reading a diary. So, snaps for you if I could snap. Burial Rites is based on the true story of the last person ever executed in Iceland, a woman named Agnes Magnus Dotter. Am I pronouncing that right? I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Not a single one of these names was easy to pronounce. You know what? I'm proud of myself for getting through the book and not letting that, like, hinder the experience. When, Icelandic is not my native tongue. I kind of wanted to give up a couple times, but I do really love it when a book utilizes other languages. It does really build for the experience. The author, for Hannah Kent, to use so much Icelandic slang, terminology, names, all that, and include a map and pronunciation guide. I think she did the story better justice for doing that, because it made us kind of work more to understand the story and really pull ourselves into it. And this is set in 1829, 1830, I can't remember. But yeah, this is set in 1830 Iceland, and it follows this woman's execution. So we know from the get-go that Agnes is not going to survive the story, which I thought was giving it away all up front. And I was really gearing up not to like Agnes at all because I'm thinking in the back of my head, well, you're not going to survive anyway, so what's the point in getting attached? But wow, if I didn't get attached. So, unlike I assumed back in I think it was my November book haul when I first got this has nothing to do with witch trials, so my bad. But, you know, for the time period and this being Europe, I don't think I was that far off to assume that this could have been about, like, a witch trial, but, you know, this was about a regular, well, not regular, are any murders really regular? This is about how Agnes was one of 3 people who killed her ex-employer, Nathan Kettleson, and one of his companions. And their whole trial afterwards, they've already gone through the trial. That all happened off screen. So now we're just awaiting her sentencing. So she has to spend, I think it's 9 or 10 months kind of on death row awaiting her execution. They don't really have a proper jail in this part of Iceland, I guess. So you would have to stay on one of the, like, dozens and dozens of scattered farms around there. And she ends up staying at this district commissioner's house with his family, and that's his sick wife and his 2 young daughters. So before the story's even completely started, we have some very believable and understandable tensions on both sides of the party. I mean, you don't want a condemned death row inmate to stay in your house with you for a year. That's reasonable to not want that. And then with Agnes, we get her side of the story. We get multiple narrators, and with Agnes, she's depressed because she feels that she's been judged harshly, so everyone's unhappy for different reasons. Nobody agrees with the situation, no one wanted this. So as we wait out this 10-month stay with Agnes in her captivity on the farm, we get snapshots of what actually happened that night, so we get a lot of flashbacks. This is probably half the book is flashbacks. And then we've also got there's a whole other storyline with how Agnes got to choose who her, like, reverend was, who gets to spiritually guide her to her execution. And it's this boy who, well, he's my age. He's probably like 20, 21. So he's not really a boy, but these are all like 30 and 40-year-old people in the rest of the story except for the 2 daughters. Basically, he's supposed to be guiding her through all of the turmoil that she's going through, and he's barely a man in the eyes of their culture at the time. And the thing is, she handpicked him because she used to know him, in a sense, but he doesn't understand their connection quite yet, and she's just kind of desperate for anyone to understand her. And that was it was a very human moment when you kind of get that revelation that she's just looking for someone to listen to her, to treat her like she's a person. And the guy's name is Reverend Toady. He is a 2nd-generation reverend, and while his dad is this very stern, sturdy man that's very respected by everyone, he's this tall beanpole of a ginger boy with freckles and bright blue eyes, and it's almost comical how he's portrayed as this very fresh-paced and kind of goofy character who doesn't look like he can really live up to absolving Agnes of her sins. I mean, this is a like 35, 36-year-old woman who has had a extremely hard life. Like, she has had very little happiness in her life. She's seen some stuff go on. I mean, she has some stories to tell that we hear. And Toady is just like this, oh my gosh, guys. Like, imagine Michael Cera. Imagine Michael Cera listening to a death row inmate confess their sins. That's what, like, it sounds funnier in retrospect, but at the moment it's very tense listening to all this. And you really feel bad for Reverend Toady. But it's... I just really need to see that with Michael Cera now. But that tidbit aside, this is an extremely bleak book. There is almost zero humor when you're reading through it. You feel cold, you feel sad and hopeless at a lot of points reading this, because it's from the perspective of multiple family members and work hands, and that's all third person past tense. And then Agnes's point of view is first person present tense. So whenever she's talking, it really snaps you to attention. And you as the reader, you have to kind of piece everything together. You're the only person who ever knows the whole story. Not one person in here knew the whole story or what they were talking about. And at points, I did want to smack some people and be like, why don't you just talk to somebody and get your facts straight and stop just thinking the worst about everybody? When you guys just sit down and talk, it's very heartwarming. I mean, they don't sit in a circle and sing Kumbaya about it, but you do kind of get that sense in just how it's written that the family starts to treat Agnes like she's a person again. And it's such a gradual and nuanced thing, and Hannah Kent did an amazing job of writing that. The characters were definitely the weakest aspect of this novel for me. I felt like none of them were very well fleshed out except for Agnes, Toady, and Margaret, the farmer's wife. I wish that we could have condensed our narrations down to just those three. The other characters, they fell flat for me, and I couldn't bring myself to care that much about them. They weren't that interesting. We do get believable character development out of most of the cast, but Kent didn't take a lot of chances in her characterizations. I felt like a lot of her choices were somewhat obvious. I could kind of guess what was going to happen next, because we've seen these types of characters before, just not in this particular setting. And on that, Kent wrote at the end that she wrote this entire novel to give Agnes a more ambiguous portrayal rather than the cut and dry historical notion that she was just evil in the whole ordeal. I don't think she quite delivered on that though, because while there's no denying that Agnes is a complex character, and she at least does not fall into any kind of a stereotype, at the same time, I felt like I didn't have any choice but to sympathize with her at every turn. I mean, she's not likable all the time, but you just have to pity her at a lot of points. She's a very strong character, but I wish that Kent had kept all of the good aspects of Agnes's personality, but then taken all of her bad ones and pushed them like 2 more notches up so that I would have felt more divided about her as a character. That being said, I'm giving Burial Rites by Hannah Kent 3.5 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed this. I had a good time reading this. The story was atmospheric and beautifully written with a strong, intelligent female lead. But I do wish that Kent had taken more chances with her characterizations as a whole and maybe condensed down the number of narrators. And this completes yet another reading challenge for me, read a book based on a true story. And I'm currently reading The Mill on the Floss by George Eliot for a class, 5 College Dialogues by Ian Thomas Malone for a newspaper review, and Schizo by Nick Sheff for, just you and me. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a great weekend. I'll see you all next time. Bye!